Eric and Kristin Rogers from is it Levia or Levia?
Levia.
It's Levia.
Levia, the cannabis infused seltzer company that I love. Cannabis ever since it became like a thing. People are putting it in everything, but you guys are the first one to put it into a seltzer. Whose idea was that?
It was my idea originally.
Yeah.
We were sitting on the beach in Maine on a family vacation, and at the time had been making these tinctures that tasted terrible and was putting them into drinks to just sort of create a new consumption method. And we were making drinks for friends and making mocktails and all of this. And I was sitting there on the beach and I put the tincture into the seltzer and it tasted terrible. And we just sort of looked at each other and said, well, what if it didn't taste terrible? What if we had something that was like ready to drink? And we had no idea how we were going to accomplish that, how we were going to create that. But really, that was the beginning of it, of just like, what could we do that? And, we were both in totally different jobs. I was in corporate America and all that. But that was sort of the jumping off point was could we do that? And,
Yeah, I forgot to mention that you guys are married.
Yes.
So this is a whole different. Your business partners, life partners, taking on a business that you're kind of almost creating. You're not just like, hey, let's buy a franchise of. Let's buy a Dunkin' Donuts franchise or something like that. So you're creating this. So that's why I wanted your story, because I'm sure that there was a lot of and I'm sure there still are a lot of nights where you guys, you look at each other and you're like, Jesus Christ, I can't stand this person right now. And I have to work with them tomorrow morning. Not just raise kids. How many kids do you guys have, by the way?
3.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so now who's that? When you guys said that, though, who's the one that said, okay, let's really focus on creating this?
It was really Kristin, because we had the idea before it was legalized here in Massachusetts. So at the beginning of 2016, we were having a conversation as a family. Do we move to a legal market? What do we do with this idea? We felt like it was an opportunity in the cannabis space. My background's brand marketing and advertising. So I've been working at ad agencies and selling advertising and doing that for years. So I had just been intrigued by the cannabis industry as it unfolded in Colorado. There were no brands. It was 100% driven by retailers. And that was sort of an anomaly considered a traditional categories of business. So I was like, what could we do to create a brand? And that was sort of the initial jumping off point. And then we had the idea of the drink and how do we do this? And then once it was legalized, Kristin looked at me and she said, I think we got to figure this out. We got to, start paddling the canoe together and figure out a way to do this. So I serendipitously was able to raise my hand and sort of get laid off of my corporate job. They were very kind to me on the way out the door, and it gave me a little bit of a package. And that was sort of the runway that we, got to really explore whether or not this was going to be a viable idea, or if we could even figure it out. And it was really Kristin that pushed me out the door and said, we'll figure this out. Just let's put one foot in front of the other and we'll go from there.
What were you doing before this, Kristin?
I'm a substance abuse therapist. And so this was, something that I was dealing with on a daily basis with people as well. We were sort of at the tip of the iceberg in Massachusetts when it came to opioid addiction. And we were really starting to see, a lot of addiction, a lot of death. And we couldn't get people into rehabs who were using cannabis. And so I had this parallel but very different experience with cannabis along the way, where I couldn't understand what was happening. So, at the same time as we were talking about all this, I was starting to educate myself and understand really why we're here. Why did people care so much about people not having weed in their system when the alternative is using opioids and dying?
Right.
So, this was very near and dear, to my heart as well. And so when Eric was laid off and we just decided, the universe is telling us to do this. We've been talking about this long enough. I had just started a new job. So then I also picked up extra hours doing substance abuse therapy in a private practice, my own private practice as well. So he started, around the clock thinking and learning about regulations and, figuring out how to do this. While I just worked, saw people for therapy, but it was so much more meaningful at that point because we knew maybe we were working towards something.
Yeah. What is it like trying to start a cannabis business? Because I heard that from all my friends in the industry, they said that it's really a pain in the ass as far as regulations and things of that nature. So doing it with a seltzer, it must have been a challenge.
I mean, early on, we were laughed out of rooms. We'd say, oh, we want to make a cannabis drink. And people were like, what do you mean drink it? Like, that sounds terrible, because immediately the thing of the flavor of cannabis, the thing of those terrible pot brownies that they had in college. And, everyone has that one experience where your friends wheeled out a tray of brownies and we ate them, and we're all supposed to get to this magical place of, being elevated and stoned. The problem is we all have different tolerances.
Right.
So, I feel nothing. Kristin's rocking back and forth in the corner, questioning her life decisions, and you feel great.
Yeah.
And it was sort of this broken aspect of like consumer behavior that really drove the insight to drinks, right? And it was this meets harm reduction coming from Kristin's point of view. But we were laughed out of the room a lot because people didn't understand why that would be a format. So really we would talk about, you don't walk into a bar and order one drink and then slam your hand down and be like, I'm not the perfect amount of inebriated right now. Like, I'm not drunk. What the heck? That didn't do its job. No, you have a second drink, right? Same thing in the morning. You have one cup of coffee and you're still tired. You're going to go have another cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So we wanted to start, applying that concept of just regular consumer behavior to the cannabis industry, that you shouldn't just pop one gummy and then sit there and stare at each other and have a good time after that. It should be more of a social experience. And this is where we really thought that drinks as a format could help evolve that storyline. It's not a lone stoner on the couch that's just sitting there alone. Drinks are innately social. How can you gather around them, and how can you help draw new customers in? So we felt like the best audience to go after was sort of the baby boomer audience, the older, the children of the 60s and 70s who had, really driven cannabis use back then, but then they led the anti-smoking campaigns of the 80s and 90s. So they were sort of at this point of, how do I participate in cannabis if I know smoking is not the method that I want to use for ingestion? So we wanted to provide an alternative to that. And then, our goal was 0 calories, 0 sugar, so that it can be part of a healthy lifestyle, to really just upend the perception of what cannabis is. So when we started that, no one believed it. No one believed it was possible. Everyone thought it was a crazy idea. But, like most good ideas, they sound crazy that first time.
Right.
So, it was a lot of perseverance, a lot of just not getting discouraged, of people thinking your idea is ridiculous. Especially once we realized that to do this, we were going to have to build our own infrastructure and have a facility. And neither one of us comes from the beverage industry. So that was one of my first ADHD rabbit holes I went down, was let's start studying breweries and what type of equipment do we need, and, start applying that. And it really all started to come together for what is the story of Levia, and how are we going to sort of accomplish this goal of creating this brand that we hoped people would fall in love with here in Massachusetts.
So how does that even work, though? Who did you go to get it? I mean, I'm sure you were doing stuff in your kitchen at first, right?
Yeah.
To get the right, dosage, whatever, the right, I'm trying to think of the word here, the perfect combination of flavor and dosage and things of that nature. So how long did it take to do that?
Years.
Years.
Years. Drank a lot of really terrible seltzer. So, I mean, the first step, candidly, was, cannabis is, hydrophobic. It doesn't like water. That's sort of a common fact about cannabis. It doesn't love water. So how do you put cannabis in a drink and not have it look like salad dressing, right? That was sort of the first problem that we had to tackle. Most cannabis drinks, and sort of cannabis drinks 1.0, you had to shake them up. And hey, we wanted to make a carbonated drink. You can't shake a carbonated drink. So how do we solve for that problem? Early on, this sort of leap of faith assumption was that somebody figured this out in another industry. We just need to find the solution and apply it to what we're trying to do. And sure enough, started learning about emulsifiers and how to make things water soluble, and other industries had figured that out. So ultimately, we just kind of cobbled together a solution there. And from there, we were able to start sort of R&Ding what those seltzer flavors were going to be. So we did it in the room above our garage with a soda stream.
Looking like Walter White and Jesse from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, had a hand canning line for when we got them that we felt like they were perfect, so we could put them in a can and then seal them up and slap a label on them and make it real and show it to people and say, hey, try this.
Yeah.
And that really, really had to lead the horse to water there to show them what the concept was and how it was going to be. So
right. And the other really important piece to that is we wanted something that would mimic alcohol. You know,
Yeah.
we had 2 kids at that point. You know, we had young kids. You can't be hungover with young kids.
Yeah.
And so this was part of why, you know, our friends were really having fun with it too, is that we would the tincture is what we made first. And we needed it to be fast acting because we're not used, as consumers, we're not used to waiting 2 hours. You know, we want to feel it. And how are we going to replace alcohol if we can't get something that is fast acting? And I think that's what's so great about this product as well, is that it's easier for people to try. It's not so scary because you can try a little bit, and if you don't feel anything, you don't have to wait 2 hours to see, or 3 hours, or 4. You know, sometimes like I've heard crazy stories of like 4 hours later, someone being incredibly high. You know, so we really wanted to make it predictable for people. You know, to get them to, you know, see cannabis is not not a demon. You know, it's a plant that can help with all sorts of things. We're just at the tip of the iceberg.
It really is. Right now, cannabis is like in this weird state. I would equate it to tattoos. Like I got tattoos my first tattoos when they were illegal in Massachusetts.
Yeah. I went to Connecticut.
See, I went to New Hampshire, and people who've never been to a tattoo place. Now, full disclosure, I have been to some shady tattoo shops, but you know, once they became legal, and in Massachusetts, people who've never gotten a tattoo would talk about it, and the way that they would, even though they've never been in one, they would talk about it like you were walking in this dark, dank room, and a freaking sailor guy, you know, with his motorcycle parked in the lobby, was like, sit down, I'm gonna tattoo you. And I'm like, that's not how it is at all. I'm like, are you kidding me? You go into a place, it's like, it's nicer than a freaking hospital waiting room, and they have iPads so you can scroll through to pick the tattoo in the style that you want. It's super professional, just like cannabis dispensaries right now. If no one's been in they're thinking that it's like, you know, back in the day when you got in a car with a stranger to get your drugs, and it's really a nice place. Put it this way. Here's a funny story. I did an appearance at a dispensary in, where was it? Salem, Beverly, somewhere up there. And my sister was going to spend the weekend at my house. So I told her, I said, take an Uber up here, you know, and we can drive to my house from here. So she takes an Uber to the place, right? She walks in. Just to let me know that she was there, and she's like, and she was with her granddaughter. She goes, I'll wait outside with Athena. I said, all right, cool. Goes outside. You know, I finish my thing. I get in the car. I had a bag of goodies that they gave me. I tossed it in her lap. She didn't even look in it, and we were just BSing and stuff like that. And I said, hey, why don't you look at what I gave you? And she opened it up, and she goes, wait a minute, where were you? And I said, what do you mean, where was I? You walked in. It was a cannabis dispensary. There's some goodies for you. I said, where do you think I was? She goes, I thought you were in a jewelry store. Because of the, you know, everything's like on display, nice. It's nice and neat. But if you've never been in there, you're like, oh no, it's drugs.
Yep.
It's shady. I'm going to get arrested when I walk. It's like walking into a shady bar where I might get into a fight because I'm playing pool with the wrong guy or something like that. So now I don't even remember what my question was after telling that story. It was
You made a great analogy though, that it's like tattoos.
Yes.
Like,
It's about getting into the industry now.
You need to get over.
Yeah. So talking about all the pain in the ass stuff. So okay. So now you finally got the right combination of stuff. Now who are you going to? Because, like you said, there's not like places that brew cannabis seltzer. So were you going to breweries to try it out, like to mass produce it, or?
So that's where part of it is seltzer's easy to make. So it didn't create a huge process. So like, you know, basically it's carbonate, flavor, can, right? Like or flavor, carbonate, can. How do you, you know, what is that process that we needed to do? So we started laying out what a facility would look like. Like how do we build a brewery, but to the spec of a cannabis beverage, which is to some degree simpler. But at the time where the market was still opening up, we knew that our most important ingredient was scarce and the most expensive ingredient. And that was the cannabis flower that we then needed to extract into an oil that we could then take and make it water soluble and then put that into the drinks. Yeah. So part of our plan became, okay, we got to, you know, learn about cannabis extraction and build an extraction lab that's tied to this beverage facility, because ultimately that's our most critical ingredient and we got to be able to have control over that. And like, you know, when we first started, a kilogram of cannabis, CO2 oil would go for $40,000 for a kilogram of oil. Now that same kilogram of oil goes for $5,000 to $10,000, right? So market economics continue to change. So like now we wouldn't have to build an extraction lab per se attached to our workings, but it gives us a lot of flexibility. So we started just breaking down the steps and the processes that were going to be needed within this facility and how would it work, from canning to the beverage creation.
But you were going to build your own.
We realized early in this process that like you need a licensed facility to produce products, and there was no licensed beverage facility in Massachusetts. There was one that we found out in California that was making products for multiple brands. There were a couple of cannabis beverage companies in Colorado, but everyone had to own their own infrastructure and have tanks and have a canning line and have all that stuff. You'll have to come visit the facility one
Well,
day.
okay, so hold on. So you had to buy property.
The property piece took 2 years.
Okay.
So we ended up finding a vacant junkyard that a landlord wanted to build a building on, and we were able to collaborate with him. But that took 2 years. I mean, we walked out of more places because, you first have to find a town that's friendly to cannabis and having it open. You then had to find a town that had already gone through the zoning and zoned an appropriate part of town for cannabis, which was typically the industrial outskirts of town and all of that.
Yeah.
So then you'd walk into this building and it was a machine shop and they have oil on the floor and there's going to be, $500,000 of remediation just to bring it to a food grade, environment. So it was hard to find the real estate. I mean, we looked in almost every town across the state, from North Shore to South Shore to Worcester to Western Mass, wherever it was just, beggars can't be choosers.
So wait, hold on. Slow down. So you have to buy property, and then you have to not create equipment, but buy lease equipment that.
We went out and raised a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Purchased a bunch of equipment to support everything that we were going to do. So we bought, we have 8 huge brew tanks at the facility. We have a canning line, everything that goes into that canning line, the whole extraction lab, a supercritical CO2 extractor that was $300,000 plus alone just for that piece of equipment. So we started piecing everything together once we had the shell of the building built, which of course coincided with COVID, where we had literally 3 exterior walls of this building built after going through all the town planning stuff in 2019, when the whole world shut down. And we were like, wait, we were just making progress on this after 3.5 years of grinding just to get to the point of even having walls to put something in and all of that. So it was a lot of zigs and zags along that journey. But once we got the facility built, we were able to get all the equipment in there and get up and running, surprisingly fast at that, comparatively fast.
Yeah. You had to hire employees, or were you guys doing this?
Oh yeah. We were very lucky with our initial hires, many of which are still working at the facility now and are still responsible for putting out all of this incredible cannabis beverages that were out in the market for the last few years. So
how much is the starting costs, like, for all this to get it going? What are you talking about here?
I mean, we raised north of $4 million the first time around to build the facility, to get all the equipment we needed, and hire the employees and, get all the goods that we needed to go. So it was a long and lengthy process. That was a true team effort. The founding team that we had that worked together.
Who were you going to for the money? Like investors or family or
anyone that would listen? Like I said, we got laughed out of a lot of rooms in those conversations, but friends, family, friends of friends, just getting the word out. And obviously,
are you setting up though, like almost like a chart to show them, like, and we expect after a year to have this much growth and stuff like that?
I mean, we had a whole pitch deck like you need in a presentation, financial forecast, the whole thing, and a promise of a return on your money.
So how do you figure, because again, cannabis seltzer is not a thing, what are you looking at an industry and being like, okay, well, this is comparative. So they made this much in their first 5 years. So this is what we expect to make in the first. Is that how it works? Or I didn't go to business school.
Yeah, no,
I didn't go to school.
It's it's an interesting problem to try and solve for, right? Because we were disrupting in a new but established sort of industry, right? Edibles, gummies, and flower to smoke is sort of what everybody was used to. We did have some data from other markets for other cannabis beverage companies that had sort of launched and were in the market. But a lot of those drinks, or many of those drinks, were really rooted in sugar. They were sodas. They were, just weren't the type of drink that we were going after. So we weren't sure what the market would be. But when you look at like what are the products that we consume in general, water, coffee, and tea are the three most consumed liquids on the planet. So if we fell into, a seltzer, we felt pretty good. What was a really nice indicator of keep going was the summer of 2018 when White Claw launched. And all of a sudden you had a spiked seltzer and people started associating seltzer with an effect and doing something. So then our story became, well, that's great that you're drinking these spiked seltzers, but there's still 100 plus calories and ours are going to be 0. Right. So it was a nice positioning in the market of like what we thought that demand could be. Overnight, essentially, that you had a multi-billion-dollar category that was created with spiked seltzer and multiple brands hitting the market. So that was a good indicator of like, keep going in this direction. And, your forecast, your estimates of what you can do could be realistic. So, we took outside indicators like that and married it with what was actually happening in the cannabis space here. And then put on the lens of like, okay, we're building this enormous facility to scale up. Like, how do we back into those numbers? Like at full scale, if we can do 5,000-10,000 cases a month, what's the path to get there?
Yeah.
And it was really setting that up realistically. Our first month's goal was 3,000 cases, and we pre-sold every single one of those drinks before they ever made it out of the tank. So we were really fortunate that like we were inadvertently building a rocket ship for this category. So it was really fun.
Did you guys ever think about going on Shark Tank to promote this?
Traditional investors are afraid of cannabis, right? It's still federally illegal. Like they don't want their money to just evaporate. And, we have to disclose in our, investment paperwork, all of the known risks. So one of those is that the federal government could come in and completely shut us down tomorrow. So a lot of people that turns off. So it's a certain type of investor profile that, has that risk, that sort of sees where that market is going. Obviously, the most recent Schedule 3 discussions and announcements from the president and Congress of rescheduling cannabis to Schedule 3 is a big move in the other direction. It's no longer associated with heroin anymore, which is a great move. So, it's a certain type of person that's really going to lean in and see what this opportunity is and candidly believe it, right? To say that we're going to go from producing 0 drinks to 3,000 cases like next month for a certain person is like, yeah, right. But then when it's happening and you're figuring it out, I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
All right. So, Kristin, I'm going to ask you this question because I feel like you're going to answer it more honest. What was the first big fight about when it came to the business? What did you yell at him about?
So in the beginning, I was so busy still working as a therapist that like we talked a lot. You know what it was? I think probably at night, because he would be telling me everything he learned from the day. I would be trying to like come down from my day. And, but it's how I learned as well. But it definitely was frustrating because it'd be like work all day. And then now I've got to think about this entirely new business that I have no business being part of. And, but at the same time, I look back and I'm like, wow, this is how I know everything, because Eric would learn it all and then tell me all about it at night. But it was a lot. It was a lot to digest, because also no one had done it.
Yeah.
And so it was terrifying, and so all the emotions. So we definitely thought about that a lot. Like how do we keep some boundaries so that we're not always working.
Right. What's your day-to-day like now as far as do you talk business all day, or do you say, okay, we're going to do business up until this time, then this time to this time is personal, don't talk about business, don't even talk about the kids, or are you still figuring that out?
Well, we're still figuring it out, but also, a lot has happened in the last 3 years. We sold the company in 2022 to Air Wellness, but Eric didn't come. Eric he didn't get acquired in the acquisition, which is what we joke. I got acquired in the acquisition. He chose not to come with the company.
Oh, you chose not to come.
It was not an easy decision.
Yeah.
This was it was a really hard process of launching the company along the way and everything that went into it. I was candidly like broken at this point.
Yeah.
I did not want to sell the company, but we had raised money. We had a fiduciary responsibility. We needed to figure out what that path forward was. And I had been, head down and grinding for so long. I really felt like a shell of myself. And when this opportunity came up, around the acquisition, Kristin said to me, you need a break. Like, I don't really recognize this person anymore. And it was frightening. I felt lost in my own mind and all of that. So really felt like after all of that success, it still very much felt like failure to me. So needed to kind of take a break and regroup. And at that time we had a third child who I really did not know. She was almost a 2-year-old. And like, I'd just been grinding it out on Levia and how do we get this? That was my focus all day, every day. So yeah, when that opportunity sort of came around, I took a step back. I really focused on the family. I'm now the token PTO dad in my town, which is cannabis entrepreneur, also on the PTO, like all of those things. So, I just needed to kind of regroup and get my head around, everything that had happened from the journey to the acquisition to what did I want to do next. I'd left corporate America because I didn't want to work in corporate America. So
Right.
the concept of getting acquired was something that was 10, 15 years down the line, not, a year after we had launched, essentially. So I took that time to sort of regroup, and that's really what led to the creation of Second Act Cannabis, which is the next company that we're in the process of launching. Really, products will hit market as soon as next week in a couple of dispensaries. So we're excited for that.
Why did you sell so soon? I mean, do you think if you held on a little bit longer, it would have been worth a lot more?
Unfortunately, we weren't the only voices in the room making that decision. We had partners on the project that were much more eager to sell the business at that point. And, it made sense to a large degree because we had created this, fire in Massachusetts where we were selling so much seltzer in the winter. And it was just this new category that was taking off. And candidly, it's the best tasting cannabis beverage on on the market nationally, period. Everyone I've tried it, I know we're biased, but it is the best tasting drink. So to be approached by all these multi-state operators with the story of hey, we already have real estate, we already have licenses, and we have the cash to throw gasoline on this fire and start to expand you state to state. Well, we looked at each other and we're like, holy crap, it just took 4+ years to get the one market off the ground. And obviously we learned a lot and each new market would be easier. But heck, if we can just lean in on all these licenses and real estate and all of that, we can just start putting equipment in there and getting these things up and running. So it really felt like that opportunity to collaborate to throw gasoline on this fire and get Levia known as a national brand. My goal always, when I was asked along the way, what's your goal with Levia? To exist. That was it for me. So at the end of the day, this acquisition opportunity furthered that goal. So I had to kind of put my ego aside and say, this is what's in the best interest of the brand. All the people that we hired, this is going to create new opportunities for them. So, it was the decision we made in the moment. So, it worked out and it created this opportunity for me to sort of continue to create and move on to the next. For me, as we sort of mentioned early on, is the drink. It's social. It's meant to help break that stigma. Well, for me, the next sort of wave of cannabis is going to be, when can you go to a lounge and consume cannabis there publicly, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a restaurant? Is it going to be a movie theater? What is it? What is that experience going to be? And who is going to be the product manufacturer to sort of support those types of experiences, right? What if you go out and get a great taco and you want some hot sauce on that taco?
Yeah,
that
yeah,
could be
yeah.
infused. So that's the Beard and Blaze that we have in that little goodie bag.
Yeah, you gave me a goodie bag here. Give me some hot sauce
So
that's
it's
infused.
we're trying to evolve, forward of that's the next license structure to come on. And how do we support that? We hear brilliant entrepreneurs in the press saying, oh, I'm going to have a high-end steakhouse and we're going to do infused demi-glazes and all of this. And it's well, that's great, but who's going to make it?
Right.
So on Second Act, we have a chef, classically trained chef on staff. He's the one that came up with the hot sauce and is really working to shepherd forward this savory category that doesn't exist in cannabis. So we've been sort of planning for the last, year and a half on that, and working behind the scenes to put together a product roadmap that includes, more drinks, but includes a lot of food-based items as well that can really help normalize and create experiences for people at dinner parties, around the dinner table, and more social events.
So where are you, is there a facility where they're trying all this stuff out, or is...
So
is this also in somebody's attic?
No, well, a little both.
Good.
No, we're producing out of a partner facility right now. Our friends at Cannabis, another great brand here in Massachusetts. They're based out of Wareham. We've been working with them, and they've been instrumental in us sort of shepherding forward some of these ideas that we have. We're then in tandem working to open up a new facility that will be equal parts commercial kitchen to support all of these unique food-based products that we're making, and a new beverage facility as well, that'll have some different capabilities from what we had at Levia, so that we can create more robust product drink sets. So we'll have pasteurization, we'll have reverse osmosis water, so that we're not limited in the types of drinks that we can make. So we can continue to build out that category with different types of things. Perhaps a mocktail, perhaps a fresh juice shot.
Jesus.
Who knows what that could be? So all part of the next step.
I have an idea. I'm almost afraid to say this out loud. I was saying it to my wife one day, and I'm like, this would work. I just don't know what the regulations are as far as cannabis.
Fine.
Okay, listen to me. Hear me
Careful,
out.
I'm an enabler.
No, so you know how there's it's spas, just like where you go and you go and they give you a massage, and then you go into this room and they have the Himalayan salt lamps or whatever, and you go and you lay in the hot tub. Somehow incorporate one of those with cannabis. What are the laws behind that? Is that something? Oh, you guys already have that idea? You already got one going?
We've been calling it a wellness center, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, like that it just screams obvious to me for some reason, Like you don't have to go in there and do it, but the option's there. The snacks might be infused, you relax. There might be maybe a smoking room, maybe not, but you just it just screams relaxation to me,
I think the great thing about cannabis currently, because it's such a new market, or industry in general, is that there's a lot of collaboration. So, being at Air Wellness and still, watching over Levia and, being part of that has been wonderful. And I've learned so much. What's also great is that we've been able to help each other, which is really important. And, on so many occasions, Eric has helped other people at our company. And so it's just this really nice thing. And I think being able to, hand you a bunch of products that are from different people, that are all sort of coming together for this. So even though, Air is corporate cannabis, there is this close-knit community that it still feels very small. Air makes Nordic Goddess, which is a topical. So it's like icy hot with THC in it.
Yeah.
I cannot believe how well it works. It's amazing. I have so much arthritis in all my joints, and this stuff is so good. And so you're right. We're really just at the tip of the iceberg. I say this all the time. There's so many different things, and it's a great way for people to, try it without, you're not ingesting it. You're not getting high. Maybe you're joints are,
yeah,
but
yeah.
You're not, and it's been really fun to, go into senior centers, go into places where you're not saying to someone, you have to try this drink or you have to try smoking something. Try this lotion. This is great. See if it works. It's so wonderful to hear feedback from people who are like, I never would have tried this. And maybe they don't ever smoke or try ingesting weed, but they are realizing the medicinal benefits in another way.
100%. My mother hurt her knee actually last weekend, and she's never tried a drug in her life. So even talking about it, she feels like she's going to get arrested. So she's at my house. She hurts her knee. She goes, do you have, how when you go to those places and they give you stuff, do you have any? And I was like, that is the most vague question. What do you mean? I hurt my knee, and you know how when you go to those places and they give you the cream, and I'm like, what places do I get cream from? The cannabis, and I'm like, oh, like a CBD oil or something like that. She's like, do you have any? And I'm like, I don't, but I mean, I have something that might work for you. But even though I told her it wasn't that, then next thing you know, my wife's like, you gave your mom some cannabis lotion for her knee? And I was like, no, what is she talking about? But my point is that if my mother can talk about using that stuff, it's definitely something that I think anybody could use. If you've never used it, I've used it, and I've loved the creams. I've never really gotten anything from a tincture, to be honest. But gummies I like. I tried the Levia. And it's funny the way you described it, because it's true that when you were comparing it to alcohol and beer and stuff, I was like, all right, let me see. This might put me out for the night. And I started drinking, and I'm like, oh, I feel it, but it would be the equivalent of like if I had a beer.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, all right, I had a beer, I'm good. It's not like I can't go anywhere or anything like that. But okay, so now where we're at, you are with the new business, Eric.
Cannabis.
Yep.
Yes.
You're still at Levia.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everything we're doing is in pursuit of that regulatory framework you just asked about. So like that wellness center is on the horizon, we could say.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it right now if you do it by way of like a private club, right? So if you had a building that you owned and you are cannabis friendly, you could turn that into anything you want, and it would be a membership based club. So as long as you're not specifically transacting the cannabis within the walls of that establishment, and it's a gift, right?
Yeah.
So you're paying a membership, and with that you get access to a certain amount of cannabis per month, right? A certain number of milligrams, you figure it out. That type of club could exist right now completely legally.
You studied everything, huh? He knows it all.
But this is also the sort of the license structure that we're waiting on the CCC to roll out. They've been talking about it for a few years. It was 2 years ago now, almost, that there was a change in the law, the legislature, to enable these types of lounges to exist. So sort of an unwritten rule that then the regulators would take a year to create that framework. That was sort of last fall. So now we're all sitting eager and waiting, and you know, the cannabis control commissioners are describing this license structure as being lucrative, that they want it to be lucrative for the social equity participants that can come in and open these lounges and these types of experiences. But right now we're just waiting, and we don't have a defined timeline of when that will be. But that's part of what we're doing on Second Act Cannabis, is how do we start creating those products that will be able to support those licensed operators, because if they do have a great taco that they want to put hot sauce on, we'll power the hot sauce. If it is a demi glaze, we'll make you the demi glaze so that you can put that on, and we'll package everything compliant for you. So we're going to do that now and operate within the dispensary infrastructure, but also start hosting these private events at cannabis-friendly venues. So we're really excited to start doing stuff like that and really start elevating the experiences that we can have for consumers to continue to normalize cannabis use in the social setting. So we're really excited for that opportunity.
So you're working on the hot sauce. Well, you actually gave me one of the hot sauces. You said you're working on a demi glaze. What is it? Like you're doing like you thinking about doing like ketchup and mustard? And
it's interesting. Ketchup and mustard are very polarizing. We get a lot of no's on ketchup. A spicy ketchup, perhaps, but just a regular ketchup, people have very strong feelings on. It's really interesting.
Really?
It's very funny. But so the hot sauce is looking to launch end of June, before 4th of July. We've also got an infused cold pressed Greek olive oil that we're putting out. That's like a finishing olive oil in a collaboration with this brilliant woman in Massachusetts who's been pioneering the social consumption space, Sam Kantner, Dinner at Mary's. So she does private infused dinner parties at your house where you can customize your dose per person at that party, and it's layered into that experience over the courses of your meal. So we're going to get her olive oil to the market as well. So all of this, we're looking to sort of establish some new categories of products for consumers to be able to purchase on dispensary shelves this summer.
What about salad dressing?
Absolutely. Dressings are on the list for Dinner at Mary's. We've got a lineup of 2 to 3 salad dressings right now in the works. And what you'll see is, like with the Beard and Blades hot sauce, we're trying to make this approachable for consumers. So we're shrinking all of the product formats down. In traditional edibles, you'll see everything's 100 milligrams, right? So like, a bag of gummies, there's 100 milligrams and 20 gummies in there. Well, the hot sauce that you got is the same as 2 hot sauce packets. So it's 2 servings in a little glass bottle. It'll actually come with a fully recyclable paper child-resistant tube on the outside of it, so that we're a zero waste product. We're trying not to put more plastics in the world, and that applies for all of our chocolates and everything. Our packaging's either compostable or fully recyclable, because we're trying to, do better, sort of in that industry.
So how many milligrams are
in the hot sauce? There's 10 milligrams hot sauce in the hot sauce bottle that you have there.
Is it Beard Blaze?
Beard and Blaze, yes.
Beard and Blaze.
So yeah, that's been it's a fermented hot sauce.
Yeah.
It ferments over 60 days with all fresh ingredients. We've got habaneros and poblanos and bird's eye chilies. We've got pineapples and mangoes in there, garlic, and then it's brined for 60 days as it ferments. We then process it so it gets all blended together, combined into one, and then ultimately dosed, and then we bottle it in these little 15 milliliter bottles that you have in your hand there.
Smells like you got some kick to it. I like it.
It does have some kick to it. It definitely does. The chef has been developing that recipe over the last 10 years that he's been doing on his own. So it was really fun to be able to talk with him about, bringing it out to the world for everyone to try.
So how's it work? Like with products like that, eventually do you want to get it into like a Stop and Shop and stuff like that, and have how they have some grocery stores are like, here's the liquor section, you have the cannabis condiments, the cannabis desserts and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the best case scenario, right?
Yeah.
So if the regulations continue to evolve to that, that's where we'll go. The gray space right now, or sort of the uncertain space, is the hemp space. So like those can be sold on grocery store shelves right now, and that's sort of driving a little bit of confusion among consumers, and that it's all hemp derived Delta-9 cannabis. So there are drinks and other products that are now on the shelves that are all derived from hemp versus traditional cannabis, but you could buy it at the liquor store like Total Wine. You could find it on grocery store shelves. So it's starting to happen in certain ways, but it would be great if you could get all your shopping done in one place, the way you can with alcohol.
Could I open a store, like a grocery store? Is there regulation against opening one up right now and being, like a mom and pop convenience store, just selling straight up cannabis products, like some cannabis candies, some cannabis,
so if you're talking regular cannabis, no, I mean, that's a dispensary, right? Like that's a lot of them across the state are husband and wife owned and just locally owned dispensaries, like a convenience store focused on cannabis. Hemp, though, is federally legal. So like you could absolutely just open up without going through the hoops that you need to jump through right now to sell those types of products. So the hemp derived products. So it's a little, that's what's driving the confusion is, we've got all this regulated.
What's a hemp product?
So hemp is
I think of rope when I think of hemp for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, was traditionally used for products like that. But in 2018, the Farm Bill was passed, and that legalized growing hemp.
Yeah.
Hemp has less than 0.3% THC in it. So THC is the one, or the primary psychoactive component in cannabis that gets you high. So within this framework, what they legalized hemp as long as you're under that threshold for THC. Well, it took a couple of years, but savvy entrepreneurs realized, well, hey, we can then put hemp-derived THC in a product as long as we're under that threshold. Well, let's do heavy products. Let's do sauces. Let's do beverages.
Yeah.
So, the head scratcher of this drove me and a group of people down to Nashville last fall, because they have these social consumption lounges for hemp that are just open.
Yeah.
That bars just said, oh, I have this space upstairs, and now it's a hemp lounge. And you went up there and they had everything from little shots that were like a limoncello shot to, the Fireball that have no alcohol in them, but only have these hemp-derived cannabinoids in them. And they are intoxicating. They do get you, get you stoned. And they had, pre-rolls that you could get that had a little bit of THC in them, but are mostly hemp. So it's, there you're getting more of the secondary cannabinoids that are available in the plant overall. But sauces, vapes, drinks, all of that stuff, is readily available at a bar, 21 plus, just like you would see a normal lounge up here. So it's interesting to see how different parts of the country have really started to respond to the Farm Bill.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where we think things are going. It's going to continue to be broader access to these types of products.
That's crazy. I can't wait to see what's going to eventually happen with everything, because I feel like anybody who's getting into it from like the ground floor now are going to be freaking Elon Musk rich in like 20 years. So okay, so now Kristin, you're still with Levia, and what are you doing with Levia still?
So I am, in charge of the brand at Air, and so and what's great about it is that I'm a little different. Like I'm a therapist. Like my background is not marketing, but this is our baby, right? This is something that is so near and dear to us that it makes it an easy job, and we have such a great team in Georgetown. That's where the Levia facility is, and then across the country, Air employees who are helping at all times. So my boss is in Miami, but he's from Massachusetts, and he's the brand director for our largest flower brand, which is Kind, which is amazing. And it's been really awesome to learn from people who, maybe didn't, aren't as obsessed obviously with Levia as we are, but are so interested in cannabis and came from different industries and have brought their knowledge with them to, so for instance, our, head of retail in Massachusetts did not come from cannabis, but I have learned so much from him about retail. And that was never anything that I, expected to learn, which is really fun. So I just, run the brand day to day. We have someone in charge of operations in Georgetown. And so I'm in the middle of the night putting stuff on Instagram because also marketing is really tough. There's a lot of rules. So we kind of have social media.
Yeah. Wait, you can't put anything you want on social media, or?
Nope.
Really?
Yep. They'll shadow ban you if you. Things are getting a little bit better. I've noticed with the Schedule 3 announcements that it seems like we're getting more views, but it's against the regulations of Instagram, LinkedIn, these companies to put something out there that's federally illegal. So sometimes
Wait a
they'll
minute,
shut you
hold
down.
on.
Yeah.
I will see the most disgusting things on my Instagram.
Yep.
Like, people advertising OnlyFans stuff. I don't know why it comes in my algorithm, by the way. I've never been on OnlyFans in my life, but whatever it is that I'm into, they're always like, you'd want to see somebody's OnlyFans. But so we'll give you an example of what you're not allowed to do as far as
my personal Facebook. I accidentally did this because I knew this rule. So this was totally by accident, but my personal Facebook account got shut down because I accidentally shared a 4 for $20 deal from one of the local dispensaries for Levia.
That's it?
That's it. And they shut me down for several days. And, that was like 6 months ago. But so we really need to be careful about what we do, because then when you lose, the only way to really communicate with people. I mean, we have email, sure, but you have to make sure everyone's 21, and there's, stuff gets weeded out of that too.
Is there like regulations like that for liquor?
Not nearly as strict. So all cannabis advertising, even like outdoor anything, you need to be able to prove out that the audience is at minimum 80% 21 plus. So even in the locations that you could advertise, for example, like Fenway Park, you can have all the beer you want in there. You could never have a cannabis brand in there because it's too family friendly. It doesn't meet that minimum threshold.
Wait.
So yeah, it's very tough. And like,
hold on. I'm not business savvy, so this to me sounds stupid. So you could have like Budweiser, a big giant thing, even though, let's be honest, not 21, whatever, 80% people 21 plus going to a Red Sox game. So they're like, that's okay, but you can't advertise any type of cannabis product or anything.
Correct.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
A lot of these regulations were driven by fear, right? And listening to, the communities when we legalized. Even though the majority did, you had a lot of towns that were very vocal about not wanting cannabis in their community, right? Like in the first year, out of the 355 communities we have across the Commonwealth, less than 100 even accepted and zoned for a cannabis business to even start, to come online. So, we legalized it in November of 2016. The market didn't, the first dispensary didn't open until November of 2018. Yeah. And of course, it was 2 dispensaries that opened the week before Thanksgiving, and it created a complete shit show. Everyone was complaining about the traffic and the lines, and people were peeing in yards because they're waiting. I mean, it was this complete, so like many of the regulations were sort of created with that clout of like, this is scary, this is coming. So, we're optimistic that as the industry, as the market continues to evolve, I mean, last year, this is a market that generated $1.5 billion in sales just in Massachusetts alone. That's a lot of tax revenue. So like the fact that all these operators
And that's
are
with
still,
crazy regulations.
Yeah, that's with crazy regulations, and that's being hamstrung with all these limitations on advertising. It's why the most common form of cannabis advertising you see is a billboard on the side of the highway, because that's the most accepted version. So, it's basically advertising in the late 90s and 2000s. You've got print media, because you've got the big digital ones, Meta, Amazon, and Google are all hard nosed because of its federal classification right now. So will that change with the Schedule 3? Hopefully, right?
That's so stupid. I don't understand the social media thing. That's ridiculous, because I see some.
Well, they're just owned by that they're trying to play well in the sandbox with the federal government. So they don't want to do anything to kind of tick them off. So they monitor it very closely. And it's nuts. You work in cannabis, you do have a little bit of a target on your back, whether that's on social media or beyond. I mean, we had some credit cards shut down because we were accused of running a cannabis business through them. And what was most offensive about that was we were not. We were simply just getting points like regular people and buying groceries and all of that. So like we were confused as to why that was, and there was no discussion around it, and it was shut down, and we just had to move on, right? So, there's still that stigma associated with it.
But you can't buy weed with a credit card. Like, it's just not, you can do a debit card. But it's kind of. Yeah.
I didn't go to business school. This is just over my head. It sounds stupid to me. Wait, seriously? You can't? So you can buy with a debit card, but not a credit card.
But it's like an automatic
Explain it to me
withdrawal.
like I'm a
an
5-year-old.
EFT withdrawal. So like when you go to a dispensary, if that dispensary has a debit card machine, it's not taken out like when you go to CVS and you put in your code. It's like a draft. So like as if, I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
It's as if you're going to an ATM.
Right.
So it's taking it's
you're
taking
charged a fee, like an ATM fee and all of that.
Yeah.
And then basically they, end up giving you a few dollars back for your fee, the fee to reimburse you for doing that to pay. But it is still a cash only business at the end of the day.
But why? That's my question. It just doesn't make sense.
Banks work with the Fed, right? Your personal bank account is insured by the FDIC.
Yeah.
Well, the FDIC is not going to insure any cannabis banking, right? And that's where you have a couple of great operators here in Massachusetts, and they jump through a tremendous amount of hoops because at the end of the day, we need to be able to prove that our dollars, like if we raise money or if we're taking money in the operation of our business, that is not coming from the Mexican drug cartel or, someone else of an illegal source. So like there is this sort of transparency in where the money's coming from and how you're operating and all of that, because there's that legacy market undertone, right, that still exists right now. So because that still exists, we still kind of straddle the legitimacy of the cannabis industry.
I feel like in 50 years from now, people are going to look back at this and be like, that was so freaking stupid. All the regulations and the roadblocks that just didn't need to be there that were in the way. Yeah. Even for radio, whenever we've done an appearance or talking about a dispensary on air, they're like, well, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say that you're going to be doing this. And I'm like, what? Why?
It's a plan.
Yeah, we could do it, but you could do it for the digital advertising. I'm like, explain to me why. And it even just now, you explained it to me, and it still doesn't make sense. I'm like, it's just dumb. That's
part of the problem is it doesn't always make sense.
Yeah,
right? It's driven by that underlying fear. It's driven by this underlying concept that there's a legacy market. That's that's still fueling all the legitimate practices. So it's like, once we get more banking infrastructure, that will make it safer for operators, right? There was, we were able to say until recently there haven't been any of these like robberies where people are getting jacked for their cash, but it happened. Delivery operator, they were held up and had a bunch of cash, and that's a scary thing to have to deal with. So, we need better banking access. Like that's also been slowly being half looked at by Congress, and this Schedule 3 designation would really help that in terms of creating some banking infrastructure. But it's hard. It's one of the many hoops that you got to jump through to just be a legitimate operator in this space right now.
It's probably one of the most interesting things that happened at the beginning. I think of this all the time and how crazy it is that we had to sell a bank on taking our money.
Yeah, that's
like when you raise the money, where do you then put it? Eric sold Century Bank on taking our money.
So you had to sit down with the bank and say, hey, listen, we're going to be giving you money from my cannabis. And they said, once they heard cannabis, they said, no, we don't want your money.
So they were operating in the medical.
Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Right? It feels like that.
So at the time, Century Bank was operating in the medical marijuana field. So like they had some experience, and that was not without significant investment on their side. They had to create completely parallel banking systems to keep all of that cash that they got from medical marijuana separate from the rest of their banking ecosystem. They got separately audited, all of those things. So at this period of time, they had not made a decision of whether or not they were going to participate in the, adult use market as well. Had to go in, had to pitch the idea of what we were doing, the business plan, what it was, and hey, our next step is at this point to go raise money, and I can't keep that in my closet. I don't think the investors would really take kindly to that. So, can we have a bank account?
Can we have a bank account, please?
That was definitely part of the process. And
everyone that worked for us had to get a bank account at Century Bank.
Just Century. They're the only ones that you eventually convinced.
Other people at
now
the
there are
time.
a few others. There's like Gardner Federal Credit Union. Century Bank ultimately sold their cannabis business practice to Eastern Bank, and then Needham Bank then acquired the cannabis practice of Eastern Bank. So it's the same group of people that established it and pioneered the banking practices at Century Bank, but now they're at under the Needham Bank umbrella now. So, the banking is its whole separate issue. We're trying to order packaging, right? And a lot of those packaging's cheap if you can work with factories in China, but no one's going to take money from a cannabis company. So you got to create a whole separate entity that's not touching the plant, that just buys your packaging, and you put money in that account to then buy your packaging. And then even when you do that, you get questions of what kind of packaging are you buying, and why did you do it over here if you have this other entity that says cannabis on it? And it's everyone's questioning you, and you're I'm just trying to buy some bottles to put hot sauce in.
I was trying to be honest with you the first time, but you made me do this, which now makes me look sketchy. And you're asking me why I look sketchy.
Yes, 100%.
But that doesn't make sense, because there's probably so many people doing sketchy shit running legit businesses. Just in general. And you're trying to. I had a friend who what dispensary was it? I forget what it was, but he said he was trying to donate money to a charity. I think it was to a hospital, and they said, no, we can't take your money. And he was like, you can't take my money for charity? And they said, no, because it's coming from a cannabis company. And he said, if I was Heineken, would you take my money? Yeah. And to me, this just sounds like common sense shit that doesn't make sense. That's why I'm trying to have someone help me. Does this make sense to you, Moose? Anything that they're saying right now?
Yeah.
It does?
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess I'm the only idiot in the room then.
Well, it's frustrating. It's infuriating, because we had the same problem, is that, part of the legislation and part of the requirements when we first, applied for a license is that you needed to donate and have someone that would take your money. And that was really hard in the time, because everyone was terrified if they had any federal funding to take money from a cannabis company. It's much better now, but it's weird to be like, I would like to give you this money.
Yeah.
And people can't take it.
That's insane.
But that created a great opportunity for us at the moment. We both went to UMass Amherst, and Amherst is one of the communities that was identified as being disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, mostly because there's a bunch of colleges there. So that means that they had a higher than normal rate of arrests for marijuana, right, over time. So with that, we were able to partner with an organization local to Amherst that was willing to take our money, because they didn't have federal funding that they were getting. And the money that we were able to donate to them went towards building this really cool community theater right in downtown Amherst. It's called the Drake. It hosts all kinds of local concerts, comedians, all kinds of musicians that go through there now. And it's fun to see that come to life. So as challenging as it was, of oh my God, how do we find a a nonprofit, we're just trying to give you money, to your point.
Yeah.
We then were able to use it as this great opportunity to partner with a community that was near and dear to our hearts, and had been disproportionately impacted, and how can we do some good with this? So it was a lot of fun, and how it kind of ended up.
True. Yeah.
Is it kind of you seem to have an entrepreneurial spirit, considering that it took you forever to start Levia, then you sold, and you're like, okay, I'm done with that. What am I going to do next?
Punishment, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, is it like as frustrating? Like, I'm getting frustrated hearing the issues that you guys are dealing with. Is it kind of invigorating, like when you come up with a challenge like that and finding your way around it to get past it?
Yeah. I mean, that's, for me personally, that's what I realized I was kind of good at along the road. I never realized or thought I was an entrepreneur when I started this process, in 2016. But along the way, I said, hey, I'm really good at the zig and zag. I'm really good at it. There's a new problem that come up. Well, how do we take that problem and turn it into our benefit in some way, whether that was a delay along the way to having a better tasting drink, or, whatever that is. So the creation process, that building process is, that's where I have a lot of fun. Like right now, building Second Act, on the precipice of launching those products into market again. It's been complete chaos in the last 5 months in our house as I've been working around the clock nonstop. We go into these facilities after hours to be able to operate, so we're not disrupting theirs. So, we processed that first 55 gallons of hot sauce from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. was like what we did to process the hot sauce.
And why is that? Because they're doing other stuff in the facility?
Yeah, they're doing their own stuff in the facility.
Yeah.
They're being kind and let us come in. We're doing completely different stuff. So we come in, and we got to leave no trace. So we come in, we do our stuff, and we make sure that everything's cleaned up so we don't interrupt their operations on a day-to-day basis. But, you make it work. But it's this part of the process that I really do enjoy and sort of thrive in that chaos and solving problems and figuring it out. I mean, just this past week, we got an opportunity to put products in front of influential people. And that's, it was just like, how do we organize around that and include the right people and bring this opportunity together? And we have 3 days to do it. Like, it's like so much of what we do is just logistics planning to a certain degree. But the problem solving is fun. And as long as you approach it with the mentality of failing forward, being kind to yourself, being kind to your partners, that we all have the same goal. I mean, you asked about us working together. Sometimes we both just look at each other and we're like, we have the same goal. Like, we're yelling at each other. Hey, we have the same goal. Let's get back on the same page. Like, we need to bring it back down, right? And kind of realign. So it's fun. It's grueling. It's a lot. It's definitely a grind. But when you surround yourself with some really good people that are excited about the same idea, it's a lot of fun. We've got 7 or 8 people right now on Second Act that are all moving towards this mission. There are folks from production to hospitality, all of that see like there's this opportunity if we work together to do something great, and that's the fun part, is sort of the rallying.
Are you in charge at all for hiring employees and things like that? Like, when you go to talk to people to bring them on board, do you explain to them, hey, listen, you are going to get a ridiculous amount of no's and doors shut in your face, but you have to stay persistent and keep going? Do you look for a certain type of person?
Yeah, and those people oftentimes raise their hand, candidly. They'll hear about what's going on and they'll come back and they'll be like, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. And then you can have that conversation. We had it this week with this guy that I've been trying to court for like a year to come on to the Second Act team. Brilliant entrepreneur, beverage formulator, has multiple beverage brands himself. And, it's been he's interested, but this was finally the time where I put the ask out of like, okay, let's make this official. How do we start working together? We want you to come on and really help start formulating some beverages and all of that. And it's like, you hear concerns, okay, he has a business that he runs. Like, what is this time commitment? There is uncertainty. Am I getting paid? What all those things. And in a startup world, like, sometimes you're not getting paid with money, right? Like, you're maybe getting equity. Like, how do we use the tools that we have in our toolbox to interest the good people around us to get us to that point of driving revenue? And then we can, make some other decisions and put money in people's pockets. So the hiring is definitely an interesting one. I mean, like, with Levia, we had a lot of great interest early on because from like the brewing industry, because all those folks that have been working in beer forever love cannabis, and they're like, wait a second, I can do the same thing but for cannabis. And it's a different type of, you know, product creation and all of that. So we got a lot of brewer, you know, people with brewing experience that jumped over and were just interested in what we were doing. So I think we have the benefit of like the products and the types of things that we work on are a little bit more interesting. It's not just like, hey, we're going to go in a kitchen and make 10,000 gummies today, and you're going to sit there and pull the depositor 200 times today, and then you're going to pop the gummies out, and then you're going to put the gummies in a bag, and then, you know, there's monotony to that. We're trying to create things that are a little different.
The assembly line job.
Yeah, exactly. The Laverne and Shirley.
Right.
That's what our line looked like the first time we turned it on, though. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's where we've definitely gotten interest. And you know, some don't work out. Some get there and they're like, I'm excited to go work in the lab, and then we need you on the delivery truck, and they're like, no, I work in the lab, and you're like, no, we're a small company, and we just need you to go do this delivery, and that's not for everybody. So it is being upfront about like, hey, this is gonna be a journey together until we're more established and can have those more defined roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. So now, Kristin, are you still doing the therapist thing, or?
I have a handful of people that I just still don't want to stop seeing. So like maybe 2 people a week. During the pandemic, you know, so much was Zoom that I didn't take any more people. I just kept seeing the same people in private practice. And, you know, to get kicked off of Blue Cross Blue Shield, you know, it takes a really long time to get back on. So I've kept it up with a few people. And that's really great, because that was, I mean, really the operations and the marketing and stuff was Eric's dream. My dream was to, first of all, help get people out of jail. The amount of people that are still in jail for something that we are making money for is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, the estimates range anywhere from like 30 to 50,000 people in the United States are in jail for a minor cannabis offense for a significant amount of time. And that's insane. So that, along with, you know, really focusing on communities like we were talking about before, communities that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, you know, that this has always been my dream. My part of it was, how do we fix the wrongs that the war on drugs has done to the society? And along the way, I've learned so much. I mean, like you said, you know, being an entrepreneur and having a startup, you learn everything. Like, you learn the canning line, you learn how to deliver, you learn all these things. So, you know, I've learned all these other things, and I really enjoy the industry. But my heart is always with communities, how to help other people get into this business who, you know, these are some of the best people we have. It's people who are growing for years and years illegally. You know, those are the best people to hire now. It's such an interesting industry that like that could be your history, and we want you.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing to me. You know, if you know, any sort of experience like that is just amazing. You know, some of the best people I've met, you know, spent time in jail for cannabis and see and have such a different view of this. So, you know, even though, you know, I'm doing a lot of operational stuff, like that is the piece that's really near and dear to my heart. So, you know, going back to the therapy, like it's something it's really hard to give up, because that was part of it too. And, you know, helping people and, you know, showing them that there are other opportunities, and also especially with substance abuse. Like, you may not be an alcoholic, but maybe you drink more than you like. Try switching it up for 1 can of Levia. You know, try something else. You know, just try to replace it with something else and see what happens. I love these stories. It happens all the time, and it doesn't need to be Levia. It can be anything else.
Is that what your clients, they come to you? Do they come to you, or are they kind of like forced on you? You know, is it like is it kind of like
forced? Forced on me. I worked for the state for a while. In these really great programs, you know, helping people in the community. Now, it's some private practice people that, you know, came to me before this. So they don't even know that this is also what they might know now.
But they come to you because what's the substance? Is it marijuana that they come, that they're like, they have to talk to you because they
No.
Or like,
a
is it
lot of
more
time-
hardcore
so
opioids and things of that nature?
I
Yeah.
mean, you really can't, unless you have like a lot of money you want to pay, you can't even get into a rehab for marijuana. Like, there's just, no one's going to do that. Insurance isn't going to pay for it. Because it's just such a different beast. You can get addicted to anything.
Yeah.
But currently right now, yes, there's a couple people who are in recovery, but eventually I'm going to need to stop because it's a lot. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of extra time, but I love helping people, figure out what they, how to work through things.
What's a meeting like though? Let's say if I have opioid addiction. So I'm coming to you and I'm saying, I want you to help me get off of this. And what are you asking me? Like how many times did you take opioids this past week?
I wouldn't see someone like that right now because I'm not in person.
Yeah.
And if you're on opioids, you need to go to rehab. You need to do something because opioids, they really mess with. They rewire your brain essentially, and alcohol is really dangerous to come off on your own and to detox on your own as well. But opioids are an entirely different beast. Like, it takes so much longer for your brain to rewire back to, how it was before and not needing that drug. So I wouldn't take anyone now because I'm not in person and I don't have access to things like Suboxone, things that could help you get off of. But it happens all the time where people ask me for referrals. So that I absolutely do. Even just for people in the cannabis industry, if they know someone and they know I'm a therapist, they'll ask for referrals to places.
But they're coming to you maybe because they had an issue in the past and they're just like wanting to talk things through. Like, I had a really rough week this week.
Yeah,
I thought
totally.
about,
Absolutely.
Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think almost, if you think about it, everybody kind of has an addictive personality. It's just whether or not you find the thing that you can get it. And I don't mean like it's drugs related. It could be, some people
exercise
and
absolutely.
it's like they go or think about food addictions and things like that, or sex addiction. I don't know if that's a thing. I think everyone just likes it.
Yeah.
but I think everyone, it's just like whether or not you find the thing and then figuring out, depending on what the thing is, either balancing it if it's something that you need, like food, which you need it, you can't just like cut yourself off, or if it's hardcore drugs where it's like you just need to cut yourself off. And sometimes like what you were saying, I think sometimes like when you get hardcore into that, I just noticed because I've had friends who were like super hardcore into it, you just surround yourself with that environment as much as possible. So it's not just getting off the drug. You're like, wait a minute, I got to cut off my friends. I got to cut off basically my existence. And thinking about doing like, imagine thinking like doing that right now, being like, okay, I can't see my family anymore. I can't see this anymore. You're like, I wouldn't want to do that. No, I want to keep seeing them. So it's like they probably start connecting it in that way. Besides like just drugs, they're like, wait a minute, what about my friends and my whatever, And
then you have to deal with the reason why you started in the first place.
Yeah.
When you're off of the substances, like that's really hard. Maybe you started using because you had these traumatizing experiences in life, and now you got to think about it again.
Right.
That sucks.
What would you say is the percentage of people who, because they're trying to mask a trauma
100%.
or something like 100%. So how sometimes you hear a story of somebody who's like, oh, I went to a party and my friend said, here, try this, and the next thing you know, I got hooked. So that.
The question I would ask that person is, well, why did you keep using it? Right? So like we've all done stupid things, use, as a drug here or there, I mean, not all of us, but some of us. and what is the reason that I didn't do that again? How you can only stack the deck so much for your kids, for your family, for your friends. What is that next piece? I'll say, like, there are probably plenty of people out there that would say, no, I haven't been traumatized. But then once you really get down to it, there is something. There's a reason that they kept doing it. And, and sometimes, not sometimes actually, probably more and more, people are getting traumatized while then being on these drugs. So then you got to think about the fact that, while you were on drugs, trying to find these drugs, you switched from Oxycontin to heroin because you can't pay for Oxycontin anymore. Now you're on the streets and you're traumatized then too. So it just keeps building and building. It's terrifying.
What would you say? Because I just know so many people who you kind of see it. They make an excuse to why they're doing it, but you're like, no, you're really doing it because of this back in the day. I saw it. What's your advice if you want to? Because I'm very... See, this is different because I have kids, and if it was with my kids, I'd probably be a little different. But with friends and stuff or who are adults that I know, I'm very much like, hey, man, listen, it's your life at the end of the day. You're complaining about it all the time, but if you look in the mirror, it's your fault that you're in this position. So I kind of I'm like, it's on you. I kind of do one of these with them. What advice would you give if I were to say something to a friend? Therapy?
Because honestly, you could have the perfect thing that you were about to say to someone, right? You could know exactly why this person is using. If they're not at a point where they're ready to stop, you not only may you lose, you might lose a friend, but also they might lose someone that was super supportive because they can't handle it in that moment. They can't handle you knowing that this is why they're doing it. So I would say, the best advice I could give is just to continue to be there for people, not enable, be there, don't support, but also support anytime they're even close to maybe I should go to a therapist or rehab or something.
Right.
Yes, please. Because, or show them, like I was saying before, show them other people who have done this, other people who have gotten through it. It's so exciting. There's people I follow on Instagram who are recovering and they're so funny and they're wonderful humans. And I'm just like, goodness, this is so great. And I'll send them to people, send this to clients if they need to see something, like people who are flourishing while being sober.
Gotcha. All right. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. Okay, let's talk about lessons learned. You were saying earlier, I like when you said you used fail forward as a phrase. What lessons learned, good, bad, something you would have done different throughout your process?
The biggest lesson I learned is take care of yourself, self-care. I often would put the business, other people, everything first. And that's really what led to burnout on chasing my own dream. And when I got to that stage of burnout, it was like I couldn't compute that in my head. Like I'm achieving the things I went out to do, but now I feel like a complete failure and I don't want to be there anymore and I'm a shell of myself. And what I realized was the biggest thing I hadn't done was take care of myself. And it goes back to what they tell you on the airplane, right? If those oxygen masks come on, you got to put the mask on yourself before you can help anyone else, right? Because if you don't have oxygen, you're going to be out like that, and then you can't help it. You're no good to anybody else. So for me, in the last 2 years, after going through that first entrepreneurial journey, it's been, how do I take care of myself? How do I create those habits and routines and give myself the same amount of compassion and love and support that I would give my friends, my family, and everybody around me? And that when you do fail, that's okay. That's how you learn. And what is the lesson out of that particular failure, whether that's an obstacle or an actual, mistake. And it's understanding that, you can make a mistake. You might make that same mistake again. And that's not what you want, the fool me once, but it happens, right? And because there's so many different variables going into it. Like, for example, this time around on the hot sauce, I read a regulation wrong and our packaging was wrong. So it got delayed by 8 weeks from going to market because I thought tamper-proof met the expectation for that bottle versus child-resistant, and that it could go into an exit bag and, all of these things. And it was wrong. And
wait, what's the difference between tamper-proof and child-resistant?
So child-resistant is that a child can't get into it like a certain number of times when it's under testing, that they can't get into it. And usually that means most adults can't get into it either.
Yeah.
Tamper-resistant is just showing that at the point of manufacture that it has not been messed with, right? There's a sticker over it. There's a tamper-proof sort of packaging to say this has been opened since it was sealed, right? So that someone could have messed with it. So
like the plastic.
Plastic film, something on that packaging to make sure that it was sealed. So, it's like mistakes are going to going to happen, but how do you use the extra time to your advantage? In the situation of this hot sauce screw up, it's like, cool, let's throw some events for bud tenders. We're doing something different. How do we engage the audience that's going to be the gatekeeper to the consumer? How do we get them involved and get them excited about what we're doing? So now we're hosting a couple of events across the state to engage that audience and give them hot sauce, because we can't have it out in the market yet, but this way we get them excited about it. So like, it's just have that compassion, look at what the opportunity is when you're hitting these obstacles and failures, and know that that's all part of it. If you're not failing, you're not trying to do something new, you're not pushing the boundaries, you're not, getting to that next level. So just be compassionate with yourself. And while perfection may be your goal, you can't always expect to be perfect in those moments.
Kristin, lessons learned: good, bad, ugly, beautiful, disgusting. Then I have a question for both of you after this.
So I really love the cannabis industry because, and I say this to people all the time, is that if you're going to get into this, lean into what you're good at. Like even though we're not like that, I mean, it's been over 10 years, but I don't know that I exactly knew what I was good at. I love working with people. It didn't seem that obvious at the time what this would look like, but just naturally it has come. But like, there's real estate agents out there who will be like, well, I want to get into cannabis. Should I open a retail? I'm like, well, why don't you just be a real estate agent for people who are looking for, like, do you love being a realtor? Yes. Are you good at it? Yes. Well, why don't you just be a realtor in this space? Why don't you be a photographer in this space? Why don't you, what are you passionate about? Because guess what? This is a long, hard road. And if you're not passionate about what you're doing, which Eric, hit the nail on the head. Like, if you got to be kind to yourself. What's the joke? Like, anything in cannabis takes 3 times longer than it would in any other industry.
Cannabis years are like dog years.
So you got to love you got to love what you're doing. And I feel very grateful that I learned that along the way. And being open to being wrong. Yeah. Because we all had to learn from nothing. Even people that were growing and doing things in this industry when it wasn't legal yet, there's still a lot of growth and learning opportunities. And I think recognizing that has been really fun. And, learning where you fit in this has been a really great experience.
All right. Now, for any couples out there who, I do this with my wife all the time. We talk about stuff and we're like, if we started some sort of business, I think we'd do pretty good. We're both like go-getters. We're problem solvers. We kind of like, when a challenge comes up, we're like, all right, let's figure out how to get through. We don't get discouraged, but that could also mean like vicious fights because we both are similar in that way. So for couples who are thinking about doing the entrepreneur thing, starting a business, what advice do you have for them? Eric, you first.
The first one is definitely to have some boundaries, right? Because it can be hard to like I'll get home from something and I need to talk to Kristin, but she just got off a call as well. And hey, our kids need attention, right? So like, how do you manage the always on aspect of being the entrepreneur is tough. So it's setting those boundaries of just like being able to say, listen, I know this is important. I can't talk about this right now. Like, let's figure it out. And it's actually scheduling time with each other to talk about the work stuff versus like, oh, we're just going to see you, we'll just cross paths. We have stuff that we need to talk about. So like, what's your schedule look like? Let's get that on the calendar. Let's talk about this so that we can get aligned and understand what next steps are. But, there's also we'll get into arguments and have to take pause and say, we're on the same team. We have the same goals. We just have different opinions of how we're going to get there. So obviously together we can figure this out. So it's just sort of, again, goes back to that compassion. We're on the same team. We're doing the same stuff, but we also need to be able to like totally shut it down over the weekend and not talk about work all weekend long in front of our kids. Right. And just enjoy the soccer games and the kid activities and all of that. So it's a learning curve, but you got to definitely like each other.
All right, Kristin.
The most fun, like the most fun I've had in this is recognizing Eric's strengths and my strengths and knowing how they complement each other. We are wildly different people. Mm-hmm. It's really crazy, but leaning into it and knowing that, you know, he's going to take this part, I'm going to take this part, just being very aware of yourself. And I know that I'm not as good at some things as he is. So, you know, being comfortable with him taking the reins on this one thing while I, you know, do something else. I think being really careful to, again, it all comes back to knowing you're on the same team.
Right.
You're trying to reach the same goals. Like, I love listening to him talk about cannabis and regulations and we joke all the time, like, it's so hot when you talk cannabis, like, this is great. I love listening to this. And, you know, knowing that I can lean on him for that. And I think that's a huge piece of it, is just really being kind to each other and recognizing each other's strengths is really important. And it's the only thing that, like, keeps us going really in the long run, especially as we're raising our children and, you know, there's a whole other life going on.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard not to step on each other's toes sometimes.
I like it. Well, thank you guys
Thank you
for coming in. Eric and Kristin Rogers from Levia, and what's the other business?
Second Act Cannabis.
Second Act Cannabis. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Now for the bonus.
Woo!
You had a big announcement about a partnership with a major partner. So go ahead. I'm gonna leave it to you.
Oh, I'm so excited about this. So we made a Mai Tai last year, and we were really excited about releasing it this summer. And a friend of mine that, who works for Air had gone to the wedding at the KOWLOON that was last summer, that got all that press, and he had a great time. And so I said, hey, do you think you could...
Wait, the one where there was a fight?
I don't think there was a fight at this one. No, there wasn't a fight at this one.
You said the one that got all the press. I just remember like a brawl that broke out at the...
I think that was just a regular night.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, can you write an email? Can you? Like, this would, like, let's just give it a shot. Oh, so I don't know if you've ever met the Wong family.
Oh, man, I love the Wongs.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're the nicest.
Yeah.
They're so sweet, and they were so excited. And I think what really was so great is that, you know, timing wise, like, they were looking for new things too. We're 10 minutes up the road from them, so they got to come over to Georgetown. We gave them a bunch of, you know, uninfused to try, you know, just trying out. We had a really good pina colada too. You know, and I think, you know, seeing it and understanding and, you know, teaching them a little bit more about the business was really exciting for me, exciting for them. And I mean, who doesn't love the KOWLOON?
Right.
The KOWLOON is this iconic institution. You know, I have these memories as a kid, like coming up over, you know, on Route 1 and seeing the giant restaurant, you know, and it was really fun. Even, you know, just talking to our bud tenders, and we have Dean McKeever is a local artist in Massachusetts. It was really fun working with him to come up with the label, you know, and our own people to get the flavor right, you know, and we really wanted to stick to no calories, zero sugar. So we use a lot of terpenes to flavor it. It really does taste like their Mai Tai. Even better if you put a little bit of orange juice in it. But we are very excited, and they're excited too. So June 1st is our official launch day.
Nice.
And we're actually getting the KOWLOON food truck over to the Watertown Air Wellness Dispensary.
Okay.
And so that people can try some uninfused, go in and buy some of the actual product, and also have some KOWLOON excellent food at the same time.
Freaking love the KOWLOON. When I was a kid, I remember we used to, you know, I grew up in Everett, so it was like right down the street.
Yeah.
And it would be like, you know, the Golden Palace or the Red Dragon. But every now and then when mom and dad saved up their chips, we'd be like, oh, we're taking a ride to the KOWLOON. Oh, we getting that fancy Chinese food.
I've heard so many great stories, like, since we started this, even just within our own company, because we're trying to, you know, we try really hard to keep this under wraps. Not so much from the cannabis community, but I just think it's going to be really exciting when other people know, because I think people love that family so much and love this institution. They love to hear about the new things that they're doing. So it's going to be great.
And I love that they're It's so funny because I was talking to you guys before we started recording, and you told me about this. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought I heard the KOWLOON was going to close down, which was the most devastating news I ever heard in my life. But then a couple of weeks ago, I heard they were going to open up a second location in New Hampshire. So you said it straight, Eric. You said that they were going to just do kind of expand and do residential housing and things like that where they are now,
As
right?
I understood it, the KOWLOON was still going to exist in a different format, but not
Okay.
necessarily in that building. But yeah, they're going to kind of revamp, revise, and renew.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
can't even like that. It's so big. It's got to
Yeah.
be so hard to run something like that. That's like all I think about when I
freaking enormous.
when I see it. Like it's
And
just
it's
so
always
much.
packed.
Yes, I know.
Always packed. It's
we
crazy.
went to do some photography there, for the launch, and we thought we picked a great time of day, and they're still packed. It was so great. But I mean,
Yeah.
I have never had a bad experience there. People are just
No.
so lovely.
And the food comes so fast.
Yes, I
I'm like, what do you
know.
have? 15 kitchens here? It's crazy.
Yep.
But
Yep.
okay, so I'm glad they're opening up a location in New Hampshire too, because they need to do they need to follow that model of just like opening up a bunch of locations, start here, and then eventually expand. Because there's very few things that I argue about. For the most part, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's how you feel. That's cool. I feel a little bit different. But I won't say I'll get physical with someone, but if they push me, might swing back over Chinese food in this area in particular being better than across the rest of the country. It just is. No one ever goes, oh, I had this great Chinese food in Texas. No. I had this great Chinese food spot in Florida. No. But Chinese food in Massachusetts in particular, you can go anywhere.
Yep.
And let me ask you this. First of all, how many Chinese food restaurants, right, when you're driving, how many do you drive past? A shit ton, right? How many Chinese food restaurant advertisements do you see? Zero. But you never see one close down.
Nope.
And you see more opening up because that's how good it is in this area. It's amazing. Anyway, so congratulations on the
Thank
Mai
you.
Tai at the KOWLOON.
I'm so
Drink
excited.
of the summer,
I
the
know.
KOWLOON
There it
Levia.
is. Yeah,
Mai
perfect
Tai.
timing.
Great.
Perfect
I
timing.
know. It's seltzer time.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming in, guys, again.
Thank you.
You.